This is Paul Sargent.
And Liana Doellerer.
And we are talking about two great pieces of artwork today. I think first we're going to start with this Discobolus, if I'm not mistaken. That is how it's pronounced. Or
discus thrower.
The discus thrower.
Yeah.
It was Greek, if I'm not mistaken, right? In origin.
Yeah, it was originally Greek, and the Romans, as they do, copied off of the Greeks and created several different variations of it, actually. But what's funny is that all of these variations, most of them couldn't get the hair or even the pubes right on the statue, and one of them even had the head on wrong.
I think I noticed that. There's a couple pictures of him actually where his head is pointed down.
Yeah, which is not the correct form for the discus throwers.
Is that true?
Mm-hmm.
I personally like this piece because he looks like he's a man who's practically frozen in time, you know, in a stadium with thousands of people ready to just chuck this, you know, yards, maybe even breaking a record.
Mm-hmm.
And you can definitely tell that the Romans fell in love with this piece, and that's why they recreated it so often.
Yeah, and some people actually do believe that the discus thrower is not, instead of looking back at where he is throwing it, making sure his aim is correct, they believe he's looking back at a woman who is handing him the disc.
It would definitely be different.
Yeah, it would change it completely.
It would.
And so, as you can see, this is truly a piece that everybody seems to love. It's very popular, especially with the Romans.
Of course.
It was so loved that even Hitler loved it.
Really?
He ended up actually buying a discus thrower, as you can see in this picture right here.
I definitely did not expect that.
Yeah. Now, what's interesting about the Discobolus is that while he is gearing up to use his full force and strength, his face is completely calm. It does not depict any, concentration or tensing of the face muscles to focus and use all your strength. It's very calm and...
Yeah, there's no tension on the face.
There's no tension.
There's no frowning where the man's, focusing completely. It seems like he's almost above trying to focus too hard on this. It's coming so naturally to him.
Now, what's interesting about this piece is that it really captures every aspect of the ideal human, which is what this piece is known for. It's for depicting what we view as the ideal human, the godly form that is sacred.
I think the Greeks were very fascinated with that.
And in a natural history book, it is quoted that Myron is the first sculptor who appears to have enlarged the scope of realism, having more rhythms in his art than Polyclitus and being more careful in his proportions. Yet he himself, so far as surface configuration goes, attained great finish.
Definitely is a master of his work, isn't he?
He really is.
So you said this was a copy, correct?
Yeah, it's one of the many copies of the original bronze one by Myron.
So this was a bronze casting?
It was originally, yes, but they used marble because bronze, it's not as flexible than marble is. Marble, you can do more with it. It's easier to make the rounding edges of the statues.
Right.
It's easier to work with.
Less steps in the process of making a marble sculpture instead of a bronze one.
Exactly.
So back on the point of this man being frozen in time, he is practically in a state of glory.
Yeah, he's about to win the whole competition. He's about to throw it a really long way.
So with that being said, we'll transition over to our next piece of art, which is the dying Gaul. Instead of the Discobolus being frozen in this glory state, the dying Gaul is in a very sorrowful one. He is a man who was on his last limb of life and about to shed his mortal coils.
Now, who is the dying Gaul exactly? What is the story behind this piece, this statue?
Well, like in the name, he is a Gaelic warrior. He was at war with King Attalus of the Pergamon army.
Did they win this battle or did they lose it?
The Gauls actually lost this battle.
Now, tell me about this wound. Is it what killed him in the end?
It is definitely what killed him. If you look at it very closely, you can see that there is a substantial amount of blood being leaked from this wound. And it definitely looks like something that would have been suffered during a battle. But, surprisingly enough, it is believed that he actually inflicted the wound upon himself. And Walter Copland Perry sheds light on this and says, "We learn from ancient history that the latter, when all seemed lost, not unfrequently slew their wives and children and themselves to escape the hateful bondage to the Romans.
So they were very fearful of slavery and being enslaved.
They were very much afraid of being enslaved. I don't think anybody would like that scenario, and definitely you do not want to be a slave to your enemy. Surprisingly enough, this piece was actually thought to be a dying gladiator and not a Gaelic warrior when it was first discovered. It wasn't until about, I think, the 1600s that it was actually deciphered that he was a Gaelic warrior.
You can just see the remorse in his eyes as he falls to the ground and laying there in defeat.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely a piece that looks like it's at the feet of somebody important. And I think the word for this is pathos, showing the deep emotion. You look at this and you can tell it's a very sad piece of artwork. There's nothing really happy about it.
Even though he's laying there in defeat, dying, he still looks extremely graceful in how he does it.
Well, this has been Paul Sargent.
And Liana Doellerer.
And it has been a pleasure talking to you about these.